A lot of women start to feel distance, or they start to feel something's off in the relationship. And a lot of them can't quite put their finger on it, and most of them don't automatically think it's pornography. They assume that it was maybe he was distracted or stressed at work, or there are other concerns. When she finds out about her husband's problem and that it was pornography or another woman or something like that, that part of her that was so open and trusting and vulnerable, that disappears. She has to protect herself now by shutting down her emotions, trying to not feel, trying to not be affected or touched at all. What she thought was real now has been called into question.
Some of the red flags definitely were, he could be very critical of me. And that was difficult because I felt like I couldn't do anything right sometimes.
One of the biggest red flags was the disconnect. He just built a really huge wall between the both of us.
Sometimes people don't know, the spouse doesn't know what's going on, and they try their best. They'll start being more sexual. They'll try to lose weight to be more appealing. They'll think it's their fault. If they're a better cook, maybe he'd like me. If I parented better, keep the house cleaner. They'll do all kinds of things to try to manage and keep their relationship safe.
The more hurt I felt by maybe his lack of attentiveness or presence in our relationship, the more I just kind of filled that in with just my own busyness.
His heart was just never in it. He wasn't there. And I lost my partner.
My anger and my hurt and the feelings of rejection were totally valid for me to have felt because I was in an unhealthy relationship.
And some women have told me that they feel like porn really changed the personality of their spouse, that he became mean and abusive, and not like physically abusive, but emotionally abusive. And her self-esteem would just sink. So I think when it puts your safety or your children's safety, your emotional safety, your spiritual safety in danger, especially if they're not open to treatment and open to help and open to working with you, then that's a hard thing to just put up with.
One way that addicts typically are critical of their spouses or their partners is physically. They'll say, I wish you'd lose some weight, or get a breast augmentation, or whatever. And luckily, that was not my experience. He didn't tell me I was ugly. He didn't tell me I wasn't skinny enough. He didn't insult me physically by any means. But he never told me I was beautiful.
I've learned that sex addicts are master manipulators. They get really good at putting everything back on somebody else and minimizing and justifying and rationalizing and blaming.
I would go to him when I had a concern, maybe a need that wasn't being met emotionally or something, or some way that I had had my feelings hurt or something like that. And I would go to him and express my concerns, and it's entirely possible that sometimes I didn't handle it well. Maybe I was a little too emotional or something like that. But he would turn it around and manipulate it and twist it so that I ended up apologizing to him almost every time. So I stopped going to him. I stopped telling him when my feelings were hurt, or when I was feeling alone, or when I was feeling neglected in some way.
And lots of women have told me that, wow, he's a great guy in every way except for this porn issue. But then other women have said, well, he's irritable, he's defensive, he won't talk to me. Sometimes he's even kind of mean, and he doesn't really want to have sexual relations with me. That doesn't seem to interest him anymore.
What happens is you have husbands asking their wives to engage in pornographic sexuality in the bedroom, and wives feel incredibly degraded by this. They can't express that concern, or it's not taken well.
In order to get his attention, I would have to be somehow like sexier or dirtier or something. I started of my own accord to make suggestions that, we take our date to to the strip joint. Wouldn't that be exciting? And, you know, dirty talking, or just trying too hard to have an intimate relationship with him. And so I felt like I was chasing him.
I felt like I was the more sex-driven one. I was the one who wanted that sexual connection with my spouse, and I felt a lot of shame when he didn't respond to that, because somehow I felt that there was something wrong with me.
It didn't satisfy me emotionally, and so I still felt kind of empty and alone, used in our relationship. And I thought, you know, when you're married, your sexual relationship shouldn't leave you feeling like a hooker.
Even prolonged exposure to softcore pornography, one of the biggest consequences is that it desensitizes men to women's pain. In a healthy relationship and as a society, we have to tune into other people's pain. We have to respect boundaries.
We want to encourage the wife to set healthy boundaries for herself, what she's willing to deal with and what she's not, but not to set the boundaries in order to try to teach him a lesson, not to set the boundaries in order to get him to change his behavior. So if she says to him, the next time you act out, I need to have you leave the house, it needs to be because she really cannot be in that relationship with him with that presence in the home, and that isn't healthy for her. It doesn't create safety for her.
A lot of times I would get really worked up to the point where I was screaming and crying and just wanting a reaction, and he would just be dead-faced and never react, and I didn't know what to do with that.
Women can get so overwhelmed in their emotions that they just are raging and blaming and angry and even physically violent. That enables it because basically it sends the message that she's the problem now, and it takes the focus off the real problem, which is the pornography and the secrecy and the hiding.
I always tell women to be honest, and to be honest with their feelings and to express their feelings, but just to recognize that if they do it too extreme, he will shut down, and that's not what she wants. They still worry that if I don't react, he'll think it's not a big deal. And so to find a way to let them know that this is serious, and I really care about you, and I really want to support you in this, but I don't want to enable you. You know, let's talk about how we can do that.
It totally turns them upside down. It becomes very traumatizing for them, and they have symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Relational trauma is one of the worst traumas a person can experience, because when you are hurt by the one that's closest to you, that's the relational trauma, and that's very difficult to recover from. Her safety has been taken away, and she's going to try to do things that will get some safety back, and it will look very controlling.
It's really common for partners to be somewhat clandestine about their investigations and checking out email accounts and looking at the phone when he's in the shower, or those kinds of things, and trying to find out what the truth is. The problem is that it creates a dilemma where now she's keeping secrets and she has shame because she feels like she's hiding now. And so what's bad for one is bad for both.
A husband who's aware of this problem, he's harming his relationship, he's harming his marriage, and he's unwilling to take steps to do anything about it. That's different than someone who's trying and has stumbled and fallen, which for a wife is incredibly discouraging, and it hurts because she takes it personally.
It finally dawned on me that my husband wasn't really in it for himself. He wasn't willing to do the things that I would ask for my safety. I pretty much told him, if you're not in recovery, then you can't be in the home. And so we separated. That's when he confessed that indeed his problem was much more than pornography, that it had escalated.
He finally agreed to go to counseling, but he was basically a brick wall. I still really wanted it. I was still trying really hard. I was, trying to take what he said and incorporate it and make the changes that I felt like I needed to make, and which looking back was completely codependent. Because I was trying to make him happy, and he wasn't going to be happy unless he decided to be happy. He wasn't going to be happy unless he decided to get help.
I think a man, a husband who's working through this and trying, there's reason to stay together. But if someone is just completely shut off and closed off from any kind of recovery or even attempting it, I think drastic measures are called for at times. Because, again, the separation is not as punishment or retribution. It's for the purpose of reconciliation. Because a person needs to understand the consequences of his choices.
To get a divorce was his decision. He was done. He decided that, basically, that I did not meet his expectations of what a wife needed to be.
If my wish came true and things happened, the way that I would wish for them to happen, my husband would have a change of heart.
So they just assume, if he just gets better, I'll be fine. That's probably the biggest thing I see that women do, is that they shut down and they ignore their feelings and they just kind of go into hiding, and they don't even talk to other women. They feel broken and flawed and not enough.
Something that's helped me over the course of this recovery is to keep my eyes on the big picture. In times where he might have a slip and I'm feeling this betrayal and this pain all over again, and I think, well, is this it? Is this the line I should draw? Is this the time when I throw down the ultimatums? He still says, this is where I want to be. And look, we're here. We're not back here. You know, we've been consistently making progress. His intention to be healthy makes all the difference to me. I mean, that's my reason to hang in there.
And I've gotten to a point in my recovery where, although it's sad and there is pain and hurt, I'm okay. My life right now, for the past year and a half, actually, I've been able to live in peace and serenity, and joy, even, because I am doing what I need to do for me, regardless of whether my husband recovers or not.
You know, we women spend so much time not knowing that we're enough. You're enough. You're absolutely enough. And you are loved, and you're not alone. Heavens, you are not alone. Let's talk about it. Talk about it.